welcome back to Chips and Salsa. I'm Jerry.
I'm CRob.
And Crow, we have an interesting topic today, the security development lifecycle, or SDL, here at Intel. And we have Diana Carrol, who leads that effort for Intel, here to talk to us about how we do that, what it is, and what's next for SDL. Well, hi Diana. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Can you start us out by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up at Intel, and what it is you do at Intel?
Sure. So I'm Diana Carroll. I'm a SDL content architect at Intel, SDL being Intel's Security Development Lifecycle. And I've been at Intel since like 2005. So a very long time. The vast majority of my career has been at Intel. I actually started out all through the latter half of part of high school and college. I was a professional cook. I've done cooking in restaurants, cooked for a
Yum.
four-star restaurant and in bakery. And computers were my hobby. They were the thing I did for fun, fixing them, building them, hacking them. And then when I got into college, things kind of reversed, and computers became my job, and cooking kind of became a hobby. So I joined Intel back in '05, initially doing security validation for Intel Centrino Wireless, and did that for a few years. Started out with Wi-Fi, moved on to GPS and LTE and 4G and Bluetooth, and things just kind of track over time. And for a point there, I actually switched over and worked in Intel IT, which was a really fun gig because it was doing pen testing for basically whatever needed it at the time. So that meant that, one week you're testing Intel graphics, and a week later you're trying out some of the first iPhone VPN software, which, by the way, was terrible in its first iterations. And it was a really fun gig till it lasts, until IT decided they didn't need us anymore, and it was time to find a new role. And so from there, I actually moved to Android and pen testing Android firmware and DRM implementations. So your DRM software that they use to play like a YouTube video or a Netflix video on your Android phone, testing its certificate storage and provisioning and all those pieces of it. And that went all well until, organizational changes happened. And I kind of was hitting that point where it gets a little depressing to keep breaking things over and over again. Starts being like a repeat. There's only so many times before you're just like, yeah, 1992 called, they want their buffer overflow back. Could we do something new? It just got old. And so I started kind of making a bit of a pivot into the architecture and design space and toward looking at preventing security defects instead of just finding the same ones over and over again. And I started off, actually, I joined a group that was a recent acquisition to Intel. And this was an interesting situation because Intel's a big company and it's been around for a long time, and a lot of Intel's processes are kind of pretty deeply entrenched. And when you have like a smaller company that's been acquired, that whole process of Intelizing them is a pretty systemic culture shock. And in this particular case, they were developing a different product. It had different market cadences. There was no back to school season on this product. This was a network gateway. And so it just did not rock to Intel's traditional way of doing things. And what I discovered was that trying to take Intel's SDL, which at the time was very waterfall and very focused on think of the classic Windows PC circa 2008. That's, what it was built around. And trying to implement this to an agile, iterative development methodology was just, it made your brain do a backstroke. And so after working on that team for a while and learning a lot about this, I kind of came to the old conclusion that the best way to fix things sometimes is from the inside. And I joined Intel's SDL team and started working on essentially re-architecting Intel's SDL. And I have been there ever since.
Nice.
I can really appreciate what you said earlier about 92 called one of their buffer overflow back, and how that would drive you into wanting to join an SDL effort to help eliminate those problems
Yeah,
from repeating.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
sure.
So, in my background and experiences, I am very familiar with the term SDLC and SDL
Uh-huh.
in reference to software development lifecycle or secure software development lifecycle. Could you
Hmm.
maybe explain what Intel's SDL program means and kind of what, just kind of give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah. So Intel's SDL stands for Security Development Lifecycle.
Hmm.
And you're absolutely right that a lot of people think of it in terms of software, but Intel does build a lot of hardware. And quite
Right.
frankly, if people think about security until you're in the software stages, you're way too late
Hmm.
for a lot of Intel products.
Hmm.
Intel's security development lifecycle really focuses on building security into every stage of the process. You're starting with requirements and on through architecture and design and implementation and testing and on into your post-production maintenance and support, because those are also big parts of security.
Indeed.
And Intel's SDL starts at the component level because there's a lot of things. There's your hardware IPs, there's your firmware modules, your software modules and libraries, and they get reused and reused and reused and reused like Lego blocks across a huge range of products. So if you're waiting to build security in until after those components have been defined, again, you're too late.
Hmm. Makes a
So
lot of sense.
yeah, and that's led us to a need to make it very context specific because a lot of times with security we'll say the devil's in the details. And that means that if you're writing in an unmanaged programming language like C or C++, for example, now you've got all kinds of concerns around buffer overflows, around pointer management, handling, and all those things. If you're writing in Java, it's a very different story.
Yeah.
You've got a managed programming language, so you're not handling pointers directly, but Java has all kinds of concerns and conditions and other problems to worry about.
Yes, it does.
So a lot of Intel's SDL today is context specific. Project starts out answering questions like, are you hardware, software, or firmware? What are you building? What features does it have? What programming language? What operating system? If you're building a Windows thing, then you're going to get a lot of info about DLL injection. If it's Linux, not so much. And that the result of how they answer that survey results what detail SDL requirements they're going to have.
Okay. Very nice.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and I think the next question we had queued up here, you've kind of hit on some of these, like as far as some of the challenges that you've faced trying to implement SDL across the company. What are some of the successes that you've seen?
So one of the biggest, and I guess I'd say an ongoing challenge that we have is trying to balance that level of detail where people are getting useful information but not getting overwhelmed with information.
Mhm.
Um, Intel's product portfolio is really broad. We build server and data center hardware and software, client systems, laptops, on down to IoT devices and drones. If you're driving up and doing that digital sign order at McDonald's, that's an Intel product in there. And what that means is that for each of these different contexts, they often have very specific security concerns and considerations. And so there's that need to find that balance where we're not asking them 10,000 questions and giving them 10,000 tasks, but where we are getting enough contextual information, giving them enough tasks to build a secure product. So we're kind of constantly trying to find that balance and evolving in search of, kind of continuously improving on that over each iteration.
I would love to see the threat model of the drive-through. But kind of to play a little bit off that. Now, are there any, from a customer perspective, are there any key points you think might be really interesting to a customer around our security development practices?
I think there's actually a couple of things, just given all the stuff that's going on these days. One of the things is that back in, I want to say 2012-ish, if I remember right. I'm not completely sure about that one. Intel started working, Intel developed what they call the Intel Privacy Office, which is an office specifically focused on privacy concerns, and they kind of, privacy and ethics go hand in hand. And we've worked with them over the years to integrate a lot of that into our security SDL. So every project that goes to SDL, which is everything that's going to be released externally to Intel, has to go through a set of privacy requirements as well. And that's particularly if they're exposed to user data, handling user data. There's, of course, the ever-growing list of things for machine learning and AI data sets. And that's another case that, of course, has been evolving rapidly over the last few years, and I'm sure is going to continue to. But that's probably something that I think we haven't communicated as much, and might be news to some folks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and incorporating privacy aspects, that makes a lot of sense.
Indeed.
You know, I guess, all of us have probably been working in this space for a lot of years. So SDL, when you think about SDL, it seems like table stakes, right? Any technology company should, you just assume, or, maybe I shouldn't, but you just assume. But so SDL's been around for a while. Where do we go from here? Are there what are the big things that what is SDL evolving to from this point?
I think it's going to be evolving forever, just because that's the nature of the game. Right now, one of our major evolutions that we're focused on is on really improving our automation and our tooling, integrating things as much as possible so that it takes less hands-on work, like for scanning tools and regression testing and those type of things, just to, kind of reduce the burden on people, and also because that helps improve consistency. One of the other things that I think is going to keep evolving is, we see a lot of areas, especially around cloud, containers, AI, and machine learning. Those areas are evolving really fast right now. And so I think it's a safe bet that our SDL is going to keep evolving apace with them. And on the hardware side, of course, we've got all these quantum resilient crypto guidance coming out of NIST. They've selected some algorithms, they've moved others to the next round of vetting, and that's making some big changes, especially on our hardware side, around our actual what we're implementing and how we're implementing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's super
really
cool
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for spending some time today to talk to us about Intel's SDL, Security Development Lifecycle. I think it was really informative, and we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, what a great conversation with Diana. That was delightful to hear about Intel's SDL program and the steps we're taking to put security in every phase of product development.
Yeah, like I said, SDL is kind of table stakes for any technology company. So I think that people like Diana are doing an excellent job, kind of carrying our SDL into the future. So I can't wait to see what's next there. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Right.